Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 546, games that feature a Hex Grid board.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
The Meeple Nation podcast is sponsored by Game Toppers LLC. Go and check them out if you have ever thought to yourself, hey, I would like to make an upgrade to my game room. Your first stop in looking for what you need should be GameToppersLLC.com. They have table toppers. They have full table solutions. They've got mats, accessories, anything you need to make game night epic and amazing. So please head on over and check them out. Again, that's GameToppersLLC.com.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I am Sierra Holiday.
I'm Andy Holiday.
And I am Douglas Stewart.
With our powers together, we are Meeple Nation, and we have a website. You should click over there and check us out. We have all sorts of Meeple Nation goodness that is worth your time. You can go to past episodes, read all about us. It's extra, extra, and extra. I got nothing.
So convincing.
Yeah.
People are definitely going to go check it out now.
If you want to tell us what you think should be extra on our website, let us know at meeplenation@gmail.com. Let us know about games that are on your wish list that you think we should put on our wish list. Let us know about games that we're missing off of our subjects. We talk about a lot of games. We own a couple of games, and so if there's something that you think that we should try, let us know, please. Have any questions that you think we should discuss? Like, should games have miniatures or should games have standees? Let us know. Propose a question to us. We will discuss it and maybe provide some nuance of clarity. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws again.
Last week, Nathan did a lot of rambling.
Yes.
And this week appears that it will be no different.
Maybe. Hopefully, a good night's sleep has changed some things. But anyways, on our website, you can also find our Patreon link. Our Patreon link is there.
So much better. So much better. Can't even. Oh, that's so good.
Our patrons make all the magic happen on the podcast. With our patrons, we wouldn't be sounding as good as we do. Somebody should take over. Patreon link there. Patrons good.
Moving on.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Sierra.
We've got this week's highlights. Dad, what's your highlights this week?
Well, we got Weirdwood Manor to the table last game night, and I was thoroughly impressed with how quickly Doug grasped that game and was taking epic turns while the rest of us were like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here because I can't move. So yeah, it was fun though. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We lost. We have now played that game. I've played it 3 times, and I have lost 2 out of the 3 times we've played.
Yep. It was really fun though. Very cool game. I liked it. It's a fun cooperative experience. Kind of a fun theme that that I don't know totally makes sense to me, but it's a ton of fun, right? And I think for me with this game, the thing that helped a lot was just that I had the character where each character has some asymmetric special powers. My character's special powers allowed him to do some jumping around the board.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was really helpful because one of the cool things about this game is that the board sits out there and then it has these 2 rings that move that represent time progressing, and which means the manner sort of shifts, and it blocks off certain rooms and opens other rooms up, which is really cool mechanically.
It is. Yeah, in fact, those are the hallways that are shifting that are actually keeping track of your time, too. So, yeah, it's very cool.
Right. But the whole thing there is that if you are in a room 1 minute, and then when it comes back to your turn, suddenly that room is closed off and there's nowhere for you to go. You got to get out of the outer ring fast.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And that was one of the mistakes we made playing this game was too many people were hanging out in that outer ring and getting stuck.
complaints Richie had was because we played a full player count of 5 players, and by the time it came back to you, it could be a completely different day, and everything is shifted in that outer ring in a way that gets not what you expected or predicted. So the fact that time can change, you have a little bit of control over it, but the big bad, whichever one you're fighting, will be advancing the time tracker too. And you only have 12 days to defeat whatever the big bad is. In the case that we played, we were fighting the Chaos Ogre. By the time we started actually doing damage, we hadn't...
What's this we business?
Okay, by the time Doug started doing damage...
Thank you. I needed that moment.
There was one other person that did damage.
Was there?
Yeah, there was.
Oh.
I can't remember who it was.
Nice.
Maybe it was me. It was me.
Did you do damage?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
The problem is when you do damage, it's putting more scarabs on the board. And we didn't do a very good job mitigating the scarabs.
Yeah, we didn't control them.
And once your card slots fill up, you have to empty your card slots, and then scarabs move and spawn. And all of us were hitting that at the same time because none of us got followers. So when that happened, we lost the game because too many rooms got blighted. Very cooperative game. You have to work closely together, and you have to play into your character's asymmetrical strengths in order to work together to defeat the game. Unfortunately, we didn't quite have that synergy going between all of us. If all of us had figured out our characters the way you had, then I think things would have probably ended differently for us. Nevertheless, it was a great game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely want to play it again because I want to win.
So the community says this is best at 2. That doesn't lead promising for a 5-player game.
No, it was definitely tougher with a 5-player game.
I need to play it more to know for sure. It does feel like the power ramp of the villain is static, but the more players you put at the table, the less of a power ramp the players get. That could potentially be a flaw with the game. Again, I haven't played it enough to say that's for sure the case, but it does seem like it maybe leans into that, so that 2-player count thing kind of makes a little bit of sense.
It does. I almost wonder if you just have to play differently.
Yeah.
Experience helps too, for sure.
Well, and I said this after we lost. I didn't feel like victory was out of the realm of possibility.
I agree. 100% I agree
with 5
that.
people at the table, right? It felt hard, but it didn't feel like it was beyond our grasp. We probably could have done it if we played a few things smarter.
Yeah, I think so. And we'd almost defeated him at that point. So a few more rounds, if we hadn't lost to Scarabs, I do think we would have won.
Agree with that. Very cool. Now I want to play that one again. How about you, Sierra? What have you been playing?
Well, I didn't get a ton in this week, but at a game night, I was playing a game that I played a lot as a kid. It's called Spot It. It's a very simplistic game. Namara and I had a lot of fun, found out a bunch of different ways to play it, and we played for a good 30 minutes. Back to childhood.
Yeah. I actually kind of like Spot It. I have a lot of fun memories playing that with my kids when they were little. Spot It's pretty fun. And one of the things, like you said, that is fun about Spot It is there are multiple different ways of playing it. Like there's the poison apple. There's different ways, which for such a simple little, just trying to match the icons and slap the cards or whatever it is, the game. I mean, the mechanics are really simple, but to have like as many different fun modes as it did was surprising to me.
It makes it very entertaining.
I haven't played that one for a long time. And Nathan, I'm excited to hear about your highlight because I wasn't there the night that you played this. I'm excited because as listeners of the podcast may or may not know, Nathan has some pretty large and very vocal grievances with Wingspan. It's really fallen from grace.
Not valid, but yeah, he does.
I mean, he's wrong, but he doesn't like Wingspan and has his issues with it. So
on that note, let's talk about Pirates of Maracaibo.
On that note, let's talk about Wormspan.
Okay, we can talk about Wormspan. I did get the chance to play Wormspan after we got the chance to play Pirates of Maracaibo again.
Are you talking about Pirates or Wormspan here?
I'm talking about Wormspan.
Because Wormspan's on the list.
I just really want to talk about Pirates.
Why didn't you put that on the list?
Because I should probably talk about Wormspan.
Okay.
But I did like Pirates. And I did like Wormspan. Now, Wormspan was a breath of fresh air for me, for sure. I did enjoy the mechanics. And I always enjoyed the mechanics of Wingspans. But I feel probably the biggest downside of Wingspan is that the deck just was... I mean, it just felt like the deck just got too diluted for my tastes. And Wormspan, since it doesn't have any expansions that are bringing any of that fear... And I felt that in Wormspan, it was more likely an opportunity to kind of fill up your regions, or not necessarily fill up, but you were going to participate in your regions more. Wingspan, I always felt like I was always failing at one region in either the grasslands or the wetlands or the forest. And in Wormspan, I liked how the mechanics kind of manipulated that, where you had your worker that was visiting the tunnels or the caves, and the more of that cave was excavated, the more opportunity you had to take actions in there. I did like the variety of dragons and how they worked together. It had very similar feelings as Wingspan did, where you have your end of round goals and trying to chase those. All that came together really well. I felt that Wormspan to me was a superior game over Wingspan. I enjoyed it anyways. I enjoyed Raising Robots more. I like the path of that mechanic, but it uses a similar layout and a similar mechanism as all three of them do. But Wormspan was very enjoyable. I do have some maybe regrets about not picking up Wormspan, but I think I'm okay not owning it. Although Cheryl did enjoy it, and so maybe there could be a possibility. But
Maybe after it's got a few more expansions.
Then it definitely won't be. I also haven't had the opportunity to get her to play Raising Robots either. So
it's interesting that
Okay.
you liked Raising Robots more. I felt like I had more control over what I was doing with Wormspan
Oh, really?
than with Raising Robots. Yeah.
Huh. I felt like I was able to plan more of what I was going to do on my turn, and being able to kind of deduce a little bit about what other people were going to do, so that actions that were going to come up in Raising Robots. Whereas Wormspan still felt more of a solo. I didn't get any real benefit from other players. I mean, there were some cards that allowed, I'm going to get 2 of these, everybody else is going to get 1. But I felt like in Raising Robots, you could look at the rest of the people and say, okay, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to be playing this card, or they're going to be activating this step on.
Yeah, that's the genius of Raising Robots,
Yeah.
right? Is the way that you have the different phase cards, and you're going to select what phase you want to match up with the energy that you produce, and then as a table, you're sort of going to generate that energy and decide what gets to be fired up every
Yeah.
round.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that's what the difference is. Because I've only played it once, and I don't feel like I did that very well. But that may be just because it was my first play. And
Yeah, I feel like you didn't do it very well either.
Yeah, I didn't, Nathan. I'm glad you noticed. Thanks for watching out for me, Nathan. Jerk.
I'm kind of with you. I think I still like Raising Robots just a little bit more for that reason, because I feel like you are able to fire up multiple parts of you're building an engine, right?
For sure.
But with Raising Robots, you're able to fire multiple parts of it on the same round, the same turn, as opposed to the Wormspan or Wingspan mechanic, which is, well, I'm just going to choose what I want to activate for this one round, and I'm going to run this one row. But with Raising Robots, there's the potential that you could run multiple rows and build robots and, do other things and synergize and kind of get that engine to really fire and kick up. So
Yeah,
But
and I
it
think
also does feel that Raising Robots goes by faster.
it does.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the thing, is it does go a lot faster.
partially does make it so that more experienced players will have more of an edge playing Raising Robots, because it'll be easier to recognize what other players are doing, more so than in Wormspan, where you are kind of doing more of a solitaire type experience. So the more plays, I think, easier and the better you're going to be at figuring out and decide what is most likely to be selected as far as actions and what other players are trying to do.
Yeah, I see that to a point. I think in Raising Robots, people are more sporadic about what they're doing, being an initial time playing.
Yeah.
You have people who've played a couple of times, and then you have somebody who's played a considerable amount of time, that they can definitely take advantage of the predictability of other players.
Right.
So I totally see what you're saying. I really like Wingspan. No.
Wow.
No.
We have that recorded.
Freudian.
Oh my gosh. That is
interesting.
That has been recorded. It has been documented. Thank you, Nathan. We know secretly.
I really like Wormspan, but I do think I enjoy Raising Robots more. Gonna totally sound hypocritical here, but I am kind of looking forward to some additional content in both of them.
Wow.
That was really hypocritical.
It
Well,
was indeed.
did you get the Pets expansion for Raising Robots?
I did not.
There's the asymmetric, your builders, but then there's also the Pets expansion, which is just a little tiny expansion. It's like a mini expansion. So there is some additional stuff for us to explore with Raising Robots. And it surprises me to hear you say that you're already looking forward to more content for a game you've only played once with Wormspan. Because I don't feel like I've fully explored
Yeah.
Wormspan in the base game yet. Like
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not ready for expansion content for that. I did just get my deluxe components in the mail today.
Greg had to deluxify his deluxe opponent.
That's
his
true.
Components. It was like he brought this whole big crate.
It was a cardboard box, but
It was a crate.
okay.
For what?
His
Cardboard box.
upgraded components. He had a bunch
For
of
what?
3D for Wormspan.
Oh, for Wormspan.
Had
The
a bunch
eggs were
of
actually
three-
really cool.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So
'Cause
all sorts of
the-
stuff there.
Base game has pretty cool eggs.
No, they were cooler. They actually
Really?
looked like dragon eggs. Yeah, they were textured
Okay.
and everything. They were cool. The components were neat. He had some good components. Better than the upgrade components that you get through
Oh, well, I was really excited about my upgraded components, and I still am.
I am too. But
So
Greg's were better.
stop trying to take it away from me, okay? Greg has issues.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. I always make myself feel better when I compare my issues to Greg's issues.
That's why we keep him around.
Yes.
Very nice. As you guys know, one of my favorite games of all time, it's definitely a top 5 for me, is Cthulhu Death May Die.
Yes, great game.
It is a great game, thank you. Now, when the original game ran, they did have this massive Cthulhu statue. Now, I missed all the Kickstarter stuff for that first round, so I just bought whatever was at retail. That statue is part of it, like it's an epic scenario for the game. When they ran the Kickstarter for Cthulhu Death May Die Fear of the Unknown, I was very pleased because they were offering a reprint of everything from the original campaign, including that massive Cthulhu statue.
I love it when they do that.
Yeah. So it gave me the opportunity to fill out my collection and get all the stuff I didn't have, which I'm very excited about. And a couple months ago, that statue and that epic scenario came. Now, I still haven't got the rest of the game, but that showed up on my doorstep in this massive, massive box.
I remember the group text from your wife when you got that.
Yeah. My wife in particular thought that was pretty over the top.
Just
she-
FYI, so did my wife.
But I will say she had a great attitude about it. I mean,
That's
she
good.
just mostly she laughed because it's like, what are you gonna do with this like 2 foot tall, massive, ugly Cthulhu? I think it's awesome, but she thought it was pretty ugly. This huge Cthulhu statue. Anyway, for SaltCon this year, I was like, I really want to play that epic scenario. Like, not to be funny, but I kind of want to do it in a public space where people sort of like, oh, craning their necks, like, what's
Yeah.
going on over there? Oh, that's pretty cool. So I really wanted to run that for SaltCon, but I needed to prep for it. I was planning on playing with my kids, and then they all left for the evening. So I guess I'll just play this. Now, when you play the epic scenario, you are required to play 5 investigators.
So you played a 5-player game solo.
I did.
Wow.
I lined up 5 investigators, and I played that epic scenario. And I have to say, I had
No
so
regrets.
stinking much fun. It was so cool. It was awesome. You basically take the fight to Cthulhu, so you're fighting him out in the void. And you have just like these little pockets of space all around the statue. You kind of have to circle around. You come up from behind. You have the 2 legs, the 2 arms, and the head. And you have to destroy the head and at least 2 other appendages in order to win the game. And what it allows, by rule, what it allows you to do is to set your mini anywhere up on that statue that you would like to sort of pose it. This is my character up here trying to take out this part of Cthulhu.
That's awesome.
And it was really, really fun.
That's cool.
And I'll tell you, like, I've talked about this game a lot. Like, most of these games have cinematic finishes when I play Cthulhu Death May Die. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much, because it comes down to, like, a couple of investigators sacrificing themselves, pulling all the monsters away so that a couple players can go in and finish off the big bad. Well, this one was very similar. 3 of my 5 investigators got crushed on the last round.
Nice.
I had the 2 arms taken out, and the head had been heavily damaged. I was playing with one of the investigators, Mary. She has the ranged ability, which, when it's fully upgraded, allows you to shoot 2 away, which meant from the leg, she could hit the head. And
Nice.
her statue, gripping a Bible in one hand, and then she's got a revolver pointed up in the air
Oh,
with
you're
the
kidding.
other. And so she was posed down at the foot of Cthulhu with this gun pointing up at his head, and she got it right down to the last damage required as she went insane. It was the perfect cinematic finish with her just popping Cthulhu with her little 6-shooter from the ground.
And then going nuts.
And then
wow.
go, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. In the scenario setup, it does say We all knew this was a one-way trip. It's a suicide mission, right?
Yeah.
And so it just felt epic and amazing. It was awesome.
That's
cool. Yeah, I loved it. It was great. And I'm really looking forward to playing it at SaltCon and seeing how that goes. I hope it goes as well.
That is awesome. I love that game. It's a great game.
Epic scenario seems very fitting for it.
It was epic indeed.
All right, so we're talking about games with hex grids as part of the game board or gameplay. We have lots of games that have hex grids on them.
So why are hex grids important?
Well, every space is considered adjacent to it because they're all equidistant.
Catan was one of the original games that brought out the hex grid that allowed you to expand out further. We see that happen in a lot of battle games where you're wanting to be able to move in multiple directions so you don't have to account for I can't move diagonal. And we love our exploration games. Hex grids thrive on providing exploration, just being able to build out your board. Those two reasons there combine to why we should talk about hex grid games.
You know, it's interesting because there are so many applications for this and so many different games that use the hex grid in just a plethora of different ways. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to see that implementation across the board with such a wide variety.
So on that note, let's jump into some games that use a hex grid. Where do we want to start? I mean, I kind of already mentioned Catan. You build the island of Catan and you're able to explore along the edges. Where another game that I'm really excited to get both of you guys to play is HeroScape.
Yes, I'm excited for that.
Wave 1 and 2 are in the wild, and at least Wave 1 is for sure at this point. And I am very anxious to both create and experience this game with you guys.
Yeah, when are we getting those?
By the time this episode drops, we should have it.
So. Oh, awesome. Good. That's awesome.
We have access to all the stuff that I currently have, and I'm way excited to include that into this. I need to do a refresher for sure. We need to make sure that this game doesn't go to the shelf. This game goes to the table. And so this is something that I'm very excited to use. And it uses the hex grid. It also, because you can place your tiles, it has elevation differences that you can account for. And you can hide behind bunkers and hide behind hills to offer yourself protection. These hex grid allows you to go in different directions and to be able to find different paths or take different routes that don't seem just so linear when you're on just a square grid. And not to say that square grids are irrelevant, because they absolutely are not. There's a lot of games that we use those and it makes sense to use those. I like the feel of the hex grids more.
I think they are superior for the most part, especially, I mean, depending on the game. But if you're looking at a battle game, they are far superior than a square grid. I mean, I look at the times we've played D&D, for example. A hex grid makes way more sense, in my opinion, if D&D 5e or 3.5 or whatever we're playing, Pathfinder. In my opinion, a hex grid, as far as movement goes, putting your guys on the map and having terrain and drawing stuff out, like, I know not everybody plays that way, but that's how we typically play. I think a hex grid's awesome. Don't play on a hex grid because that's not how the rules are for the game itself.
Yeah, the rules are set up for just a normal grid.
But I think it would be a better experience to have it as a hex grid and just have that each space be a 5-foot space for movement purposes. That being said, like if I look at Star Wars miniatures, old version of the game from back in the early 2000s, that is a square grid movement game. We play it on a hex grid. Like I built big boards to go over on my table, and it's all hexes, just because it plays so much nicer with a hex grid than it does with the square grid.
It's more logical, I think.
For sure.
Especially for something like that. We play a lot of Star Wars Imperial Assault. We haven't played it in a long time. Having a hex grid on that, I think, would be superior. The square grid works.
It does.
Still.
It does, but I will say the rule set matters.
Yes,
the rule set does definitely matter, because some have a hex, but they don't really make great use of it, and some have just a normal grid and they make exceptional use of it, which I think the case with Imperial Assault. The movement allows you to take advantage of the diagonal space.
Yes, that's true.
It doesn't limit you. You guys are 100% right about the hex being, I think, the superior, system to use, generally speaking. It's not just movement, right? It's not just, okay, here's the map and it has hexes and we're going to battle on it or move on it or whatever. having the 6-sided hex is also, I think, really advantageous when you look at games that employ like tile placement or tile building, right? Adjacency,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It gives you more options, more patterns that you can build. First one that comes to mind is Cascadia, right?
Yep.
This is one my wife and I play all the time. You're drafting those tiles, you're playing them out, and the options for the little ecosystems that allows you to create, especially in tandem with the way that the different animals score, like creating a river of fish that goes through the landscape, or line of sight with the hawks, or whatever it may be. There's no way you could make a game like that work without the hex.
For sure. Suburbia, very similar. You're scoring points based on adjacency. A lot of the tiles anyway are based on what they are adjacent to, and having potentially 6 tiles that can be adjacent to each tile can really boost that engine that you're trying to build, whether it be points or whatever engine you're trying to create. Having that hex shape really does open up a lot of options for you.
Games like Terraforming Mars, where you're trying to deal with that adjacency, you're trying to put your forests around the water in your cities, and you have to build your cities adjacent to this, or you have to put tiles that are adjacent. When you have just that square grid, that limits the number of options and prevents, still possible for sure, the strategic value of being able to plan for that, and sometimes the complexity of trying to surround something to make that more worthwhile. Like you mentioned with Cascadia, the river, where you're twisting and turning. I mean, I look at games like Carcassonne, where it uses the square tiles to form a square grid, where you look at a game like Maglev Metro, where you have hex tiles that you're using to connect your train lines, and so you can adjust those and you can twist those, and it gives you more variety and options of ways to go. Sharp elbow, slight dogleg, straight. Even comparing Carcassonne and Maglev Metro, the variety, it makes you feel like the space is more wide open.
I definitely agree with that. It also can be fun when deployed for pathfinding. I mean, we're hinted at that with like battles, but you take a game that I really like, and one that I wish we played more of, The Quest for El Dorado. The tiles with hexes that kind of link together to form a unique shape, but the way that you have to pathfind through there just wouldn't work with a normal grid. It would have to be the hexes, and giving you the options to go in multiple spaces, especially since you can bottleneck places and potentially block other players. Again, a game like that would not work unless it used the hex for pathfinding and moving through that map.
Sierra, I know a game you've played, Photosynthesis.
Yeah.
The way the sun casts the shadow and allows your trees to grow, it works very well with that hex grid. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since I've played Photosynthesis, is that
It's been a hot minute.
when the trees are in the shade, they're not going to grow as much. They want the direct sunlight, but you have the sun going around the grid, providing light. Clever mechanic that couldn't be done on a square grid. And so I do like how games like Photosynthesis bring that out.
Yeah, it would be far less interesting on a square grid, right? Versus that hexagonal grid. Favorite games to play with my wife, which is really weird because she typically doesn't like long games, is Empire Builder.
Yes, it is a long game.
And the grid in this is, I mean, that's really what you're dealing with. You're drawing markers or crayons. You're building tracks across the United States with the regular game of Empire Builder. I'm not sure if they've come out with a different one, but your tycoons, your railroad tycoons, and you're trying to build tracks. Each of the points on the hex are actual dots on the board, and then you have one in the center as well. Building tracks, crossing rivers, building into cities, trying to create routes to deliver goods. It's just a pick up and delivery style game while you're trying to build tracks and upgrade your train. Once again, the fact that this is a hex grid makes the game work very well for building tracks. It just wouldn't flow quite the same on a square grid. I think that is the case with a lot of games that use the hex grid for stuff like this. Your movement flows better. It's less constraining. I think it really works for Empire Builder itself anyway.
So Empire Builder Europe coming out in 2025.
Oh, how about that?
It's exactly the same as Empire Builder,
Just
but in Europe.
In Europe. Another game that uses the hex system, which is a game that you guys rag on all the time, and that's Cooper Island. It's such a great game.
Is it?
It is. It's awesome. You guys it's just too heavy for you. But
I don't think it's necessarily too heavy.
I think that was the issue.
I mean, I definitely would try Cooper Island again. I think it has been enough time.
Everyone else has forgotten to.
Yeah, everyone would be more on a level.
Yeah.
And my main complaint wasn't about Cooper Island or anything about the mechanics, the game itself.
Mine was.
It behooved you to have played it before.
Yes, even one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Going back to the hex element of this game, just regular hex tiles, but you also have terrain tiles that are 2 hexes attached with 1 edge. And where you place those is basically how your resource generation, where that comes from. It is a huge part of being successful in the game, is being able to generate resources in a way that is going to be, the higher you build, the more resources that space is going to produce. However, you have to place like terrain tiles on top of the others. So how you place that and which ones you take is very, very important. And how you build that up, they also have to be the same level as when you place a tile. If I'm playing a tile on level 3 with a 2 hex tile, both of those spaces must be at the same level. So there's a lot of planning that is involved in that game, and there is a lot of organizing your tiles in a way that is going to be the most advantageous for you to produce those resources and produce the resources as quickly as you can so you can build the stuff. Building that is really expensive, and was Doug's biggest complaint is, how am I supposed to even be able to accomplish anything?
Yeah.
Placing those hex tiles and placing that terrain the best way possible, the most efficient way to get that built up high and get those high value resources is key in that game to be able to accomplish what you're trying to do.
Cooper Island does need a revisit.
You just like to rag on it because I don't like Seafall. I know what it is. You can't hide. I know.
So another game, 2 little quick games that I want to talk about. Hive doesn't have a board per se, but you're playing your hex tokens in front of you on the table in front of you, and they have to meet edge to edge. Hive is a very clever 2-player game. Mandatory to play with the mosquito and the pill bug expansion, 100% necessary. But I like that these are the big chunky plastic tiles. The way your bugs move is all dependent on edges. There's a path that they can take. Sometimes, like the grasshoppers, have to go in a straight line. The ants can move anywhere along the perimeter. Pill bug that can allow you to pick up a tile and move it somewhere else. And the beetles that will allow you to go up and over people. It's a very, very clever use of the grid or not the grid, but the hexes to form the grid, how their movement is performed. Also very high on my use of the hex is Takanoko, which is the panda.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Panda bamboo game where you're trying to produce patterns on the table. And so as you draw hexes, you're going to add them onto the board, and you're going to try to form and create patterns as one of the ways to score points. What bamboo that you grow on those, and how you irrigate those, all part of the game that just, I think, bring that hex grid out that wouldn't be possible on a square grid.
How about Acropolis?
Acropolis is a great game.
Such a good game.
I almost wish I'd put this on my top 5. I really like Acropolis.
It's wonderful. And once again, if you were using just square tiles, it would not be the same game.
No.
You're looking for adjacency. You're trying to build your city up. This is a must-have as far as the hex grid on this for this game. It just would not work the same way without having the hexagonal grid.
It's not just a single hex, right? You have the set of 3 hexes, and how you add those and how you manipulate those, and then how you can stack and try to benefit on the points. Acropolis is a phenomenal game, in my opinion, for sure. I love Acropolis. Strategic replayability provides continued enjoyment. Doug, myself, and Jody play online, and
That doesn't count, though.
it totally counts. I've actually been able to win that against Jody.
It definitely doesn't count then.
Jody probably agrees with that.
I think what I like about that game in particular is that it plays so quickly. There's enough strategy, but yet it's almost a filler game. Almost. It's got some meat to it. I like that game. I need a copy of it really badly.
Huh. I actually thought you had one.
I don't.
I know, I think that all the time, and I'm like, wait.
I don't own it. I've asked if we have it available, but I think it was out of print last time we checked. So hopefully sometime soon it'll be back in print and we can gain a copy at our house.
I mean, you could always just play it on BGA with the rest of us.
But it doesn't count, so why would I do that?
But we still play it and have fun. So,
Shh. No.
like, it doesn't count for what?
fun.
Wow, really? Because I have lots of fun when I play it.
You know, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
It is pretty widely available.
Is
so-
it? Okay, we need to get it. Acropolis. Great hexagonal game.
Yeah. A fun one that has several renditions, the Dice Hospital, Dice Theme Park, and Dice Hospital Emergency Roll. All those use a hex grid. The hospital and the theme park allow you have a basic board and you're able to expand rooms or specialty places in your hospital or specialty parks in your theme ride or your theme park. As you put those hexes on the board, you're able to then send your workers or your employees to these different rooms to treat or entertain these dice that are on your board. And you try to keep down your dice to a minimum. You try to get it down to 0 if you can. Like on the hospital one, if you get patients to 6 and then you heal them one more time, then they're discharged from the hospital. Or if you can't heal them and they get down to a 1 and they drop down 1 more, then you send them to the morgue, which you want to avoid because that gives you negative points. The theme park one I haven't played, so I can't speak too much to that. But also the emergency roll, which is very similar to the dice hospital. You have 9 paths that are on this hex grid. You roll your dice and you have 3 dice that you're going to choose from, a yellow, a red, and a green die. And you have locations that are on the tracks that you have to play. However, the next place that you fill has to be higher number than the previous section. When you're doing that, you have to make sure that you have opportunities to reset that number, because it's easy to place a big number there and then you're like, oh no, I put a 6 there. I have to wait for the opportunity to come up to reset that row so that I can put a 1 there, or at least something lower than a 6. That challenge of that game is very simple as the roll and write version is. I think I prefer almost the roll and write version over the full version of the game.
Really?
Yeah, but they're both fun in their own places. The Dice Hospital takes more time and it's more involved, takes longer turns. Whereas the emergency roll is very simple. You're going to roll, you're going to pick one, and then your opponents get the choice of the other 2 dice that are remaining. Then it just keeps going around the table. Whereas the Dice Hospital, you have to go through the drafting of the ambulances. You have to go through the drafting of...
I like all of that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do too.
I like Dice Hospital. I think it's a great game.
It is a great game.
Yeah, and I need to bust out the Dice Theme Park. Of the 2, I like the emergency roll better, but...
We'll have to play it sometime. I haven't played that
Oh,
one.
you haven't played that one?
Yeah,
I haven't either.
I haven't played it. So
Okay, we'll bust that
take
one
your
out
word
for sure.
it, I guess. But
Yeah.
He
We
likes
need to play it.
Seafall, so.
But I do like, why is this hate on Seafall episode?
wow.
That made me think of Ecos,
Yeah.
how the tile placement and not worker, but like token placement works in that one. It's not a game that I particularly enjoy, but
Me neither, Sierra.
Amara loves that one.
I know.
Loves that game.
I don't know.
It's a fun game. I like that game too.
It's okay.
It's because your first game was tainted, Doug. We should have not drafted the first game. We should have just done
No, we've played it a couple times. Yeah, I think I lost both those games pretty horribly. Honestly, that mechanically, I don't know why. It's just not that interesting to me. I mean, it's just a personal taste thing. I don't
Yeah.
think
Right.
the game's broken. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Those mechanisms just didn't quite click.
Yeah, but that's another game where it does allow you to create the Nile. You can create those landmarks.
Yeah, and that was with the expansion that
Yeah.
introduced the landmarks. But yes, once again, you need to get those tiles in a very specific order in order to create the landmarks, as long as you have the card to do so. It's not just that. A lot of the cards will have a lot of adjacency points. So you're going to gain 1 point for every water tile adjacent to the tile that you place, or something like that. So there's a lot of adjacency rules, or even with the animals that you lay down, there are a lot of adjacency rules. So once again, that hexagonal tile with the or shape with the more shapes that would be adjacent, 6 versus 4, really allow for you to score more points. And there are so many cards, point cards in particular, that have an adjacency mechanic for scoring in that game.
Yeah.
A game that I would really like to return to, I think we collectively played it once that I can remember and know of. I think I played it twice total, but it's been a really long time since I played it. Dinosaur World. Build your park out of all the little hex pieces. And what I loved about that is the way that you have to plot your tour. So each hex piece has like a unique feature. Sometimes it has like pens that you can hold dinosaurs on, or it has a special ability or point scoring opportunities, or whatever the case may be. It has something on it that you can do, manipulate, take an action on, whatever. But as you're building your park out, you have to plan your Jeep route, because the excitement level for each one of those tiles goes down every time it gets visited. So you want to try to like build out your park in such a way that when you take your first Jeeple tour through the park, right, you're hitting all these places that'll maximize your points, but then you have to be careful not to necessarily hit those same hexes too often, or because the excitement will go down and the points will also go down. I really like the way that the game came together, and I like the way it utilized the hexes to make you think about pathing your Jeep through the park. We need to revisit that at some point. That was a fun game. I remember really liking it.
Yeah, it is a good game. Didn't you call that?
I did. Yep. And now we're talking about it. I'm having some regrets. So.
Well, I have all of it, and I have the deluxe Kickstarter stuff. So
my regrets are gone.
Yep.
Yay!
So we can just
Yay, Doug.
Yep. Nathan, have you played Land and Sea?
Yes, I have.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you played it with Cheryl?
Yes.
I imagine that she would really like that game. I have it, and I'll teach it to you.
I have it.
Oh, you do have it? Okay. Learn it, or I'll teach it to you, and Cheryl would really like that game. You're just playing out tiles, and you're trying to complete sections of land or sections of sea. Depending on how you place all those tiles, finish those land or sea sections off, you can score a grundle of points. You can also set yourself up to steal some points from your opponent, too. It's a surprisingly fun 2-player game.
Played it, and I can't remember if I played it with her. I actually feel like it was you and I who played it. Maybe not.
I'm having like a vague memory. If we did, it would have been a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Only there was an app. I'll have to look it up. Okay, yeah. You and I did play this game, Nathan, last year on July 1st.
Oh, yeah. I remember that like it was yesterday.
And you beat me. It was 69-72.
It's too bad it wasn't 62-62.
I totally would have won the tie, too.
Yeah, shut.
Didn't play that one with Cheryl. I should get her to the table with that one, because I agree. I think that was one that she would very much enjoy. I need to refresh myself on the rules before I can teach that to her, because it's been a long time since July 1st last year.
Well, those are some incredibly fun hex games, and we are going to talk about some even better Hex Grid games when we get to talk about our top 5s next week. So stay tuned for that. Until next time.
We'll see you not being square, but being hex at the game table.
Wow.
That's hexy.
Well done.
Oh, even better.
Like that.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, You can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.